So to sketch and explain the cranial cruciate rupture, just start off and draw a quick femur and make sure and get those nice rounded condyles on the end. And then we can come in and we can add our patella. And then we want to come in and draw our tibial plateau and think of it as a flat table because that's what it really is. Now let's orientate ourselves. So we're drawing this from a lateral view. We'll say a left lateral view. So as always, let's put in our patient's head, right? So head and tail. And next we will add the cruciates. So we'll start with cranial cruciate and just remember that they are named for their cranial attachment on the tibia. So we'll kind of just simply draw it that way is the cranial cruciate ligament. All right, and we'll change our colors here and we'll draw the caudal cruciate ligament, which goes from the caudal tibia to the cranial aspect of the femur. We won't worry that much about really getting them accurately placed in there, but just doing a quick sketch here. So we know that in our system, the tibia is displaced cranially relative to the femur. So the tibia, the cranial dorsine, we're looking at a tibia that's displaced cranially relative to the distal femur. So if you look at these two tethers, you have to ask yourself, which one of these would be disrupted in order to get this cranial displacement of the proximal tibia relative to the distal femur. And to kind of figure that out, let's draw another limb. So here's another femur with the condyles again, and the patella. The tibia in this instance, we're going to draw it as it's cranial displaced, as would be in a cranial cruciate ligament rupture. And we'll kind of put it in like this. And let's go in and think about our attachments of our two ligaments. So the attachments of caudal cruciate ligament would be here and here. So obviously that ligament is not going to be affected or not prevent or tether this cranial displacement of the tibia relative to the distal femur. However, when you look at the cranial cruciate ligament and think about its attachments, you can see its attachments here and here. In other words, this thing is the one that prevents cranial displacement of the proximal tibia relative to the distal femur. And when you have a rupture of this cranial cruciate ligament, that tether is lost. And that's why this tibia, could move in this direction cranially relative to the distal femur. So if you just quickly sketch it and draw the X as the cruciates and think about what prevents the cranial displacement, and if you lose that and focus on the attachments, you can think about what attachment has to be lost in order for this swinging movement of the tibia, the proximal tibia relative to the distal femur.